quarterbacks, where they are linked to go, what's going on with all of them. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza is really the only safe one without a decision. We know Fernando Mendoza is going to come out this year. We know the Raiders have the number one pick. That pretty much seems to me right now like a done deal. And I think the reason why it seems like a done deal is because just the trajectory that the Raiders have been on. When we look at the Raiders, they've tried multiple times going with the veteran quarterback option or whatever. They haven't drafted a quarterback in a while. Obviously, everything they have done in the last 4 to 5 years to this point has not worked out. You have a guy in Fernando Mendoza right now that has climbed the ranks. Obviously, Indiana has been a great story, and they have been a machine, the most dominant team. It seems to me right now, with everybody else in this class, Fernando Mendoza has the upper nod against all of them to go to number one. Obviously, we're going to talk about Dante Moore. I thought, again, if Dante Moore were to shock Oregon, pull off that upset, maybe make a run in the national championship, he's a little more physically gifted than Fernando Mendoza. He could have made a case for himself. Obviously, with everything that went on in that game, his stock either, stayed the same or went down. He did not pass Fernando Mendoza by any means. What do you think about the Raiders right now taking Mendoza? Again, I've shared my opinions on him and what I think of him as an NFL quarterback. But right now, that seems the only thing that could happen, him at one to the Raiders. What do you think of all of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially, with this run that they've gone on and, especially how he looked the other night and what the Raiders need. I mean, the Raiders have a ton of needs, but quarterback is definitely at the top of the list. They're in the market for a new head coach, so we're going to see what happens there. It's a lock that he's going to go there. And, there are some pieces that he's going to have. It's not like he's going in, there's going to be absolutely nothing around him. There's still a ton of work that needs to be done, but you got two cornerstone pieces in Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers. So, there's that, and you can continue to build around that. But it's not the best situation. You know, this isn't one of the strongest draft classes that we've seen. There's definitely been better draft classes. I mean, look at the quarterbacks that we're seeing right now in the playoffs in the NFL. I mean, that's a very good draft class. Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Bo Nix in the postseason. So it's definitely going to be Mendoza. Dante Moore, I mean, that was as bad as it could have been for him. I mean, literally right out of the gate, a pick six. And they just, and Indiana just destroyed them in that game. And they look like they're on their way to a national championship. So it's going to be interesting what happens there with Dante Moore, if he's going to stay, if he's going to, declare for the draft. It puts some of the other teams in a tough spot, though, because of how poor he played. And it shows that, there's definitely going to need to be some development there that needs to be taken care of. So Mendoza right now looks like he's, the one that's ready. But he's going to be put in a tough spot going to the Raiders at one, because that's what the Raiders need.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of any of these quarterbacks as far as pro prospects. I have made that case known. Right now, I think Indiana's a machine, and again, it starts with Mendoza. He is making every throw. I do think he has tremendous clean pockets, but again, he is making every throw in the right spot. He's won the Heisman. He's on his way to win a national championship. You can't get a better year from him. And right now, like you said, with the quarterback class, it is pretty weak. A lot of these guys, too, when you look at Brandon Mendoza, Dante Moore, I wouldn't say they are shocks that they're in the spot they're in right now with their draft capital. But at the same time, these weren't guys where we were waiting on them for 2-3 years. These are guys that kind of climbed the ranks. And again, the quarterbacks that we had in the beginning of the year possibly going in the first round, when you looked at like a Drew Aller, Kay Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, these guys, again, they climbed the ranks, but they also took advantage of the opportunity of a lot of the guys that people were waiting on flaming out too. I just think, again, for Fernando Mendoza, it's going to be extremely hard for him in the NFL, especially going to the Raiders. I don't think he has the greatest ability to extend plays, doesn't have a lot of rushing upside. So, again, he's going to have to form himself into being an elite pocket passer at the NFL level. And, again, when you're getting dominating the trenches on the Raiders, it could be very tough. That's the biggest thing with me as well. When you look at, again, like the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL, the only guys that really don't have the ability to extend plays pretty much to any level are Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford, and those guys are elite from the pocket. They're extremely accurate. They have great anticipation. I just think, again, when you're taking away half of that element of a quarterback's game, I think it leaves you not that much upside where you got to just be elite every throw from in the pocket, which I worry about, again, with the Raiders up front. Again, what are your thoughts on Mendoza, concerns, anything before we get into the next guy?
Yeah, I mean, especially with how the NFL is today, I mean, you got to have some ability to use your legs. I mean, the age of the traditional pocket passer, that's kind of in the past. Um, so you got to be able to use your legs at certain points because, I mean, these defenses, I mean, especially last night, you look at the Texans defense going up against Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have the legs that he used to have. So, I mean, he's just a sitting duck. And then, late in the game, you had a couple of turnovers. You got to be able to do that. You got to be able to extend plays. And that's why, again, you look at the quarterbacks that are in the playoffs right now, they all have the ability to do that. I mean, some of the plays like Caleb Williams, the play that he made on 4th and 8, I mean, that's one of the greatest throws you'll ever see on 4th down. Like, you got to be able to, I mean, not exactly do that, but, have the ability to do that if it's a broken play and, you got to come up with something on the fly and somebody gets open, so that's why, again, Raiders not the best situation because the offensive line it's not very good. And Geno Smith was not great this year, but it also didn't help that he had an offensive line that couldn't block, and Ashton Genty struggled to run the football because of the line too. I mean, it wasn't Boise State, it's the NFL, and didn't have the best rookie season he could have had because of the situation. So obviously that's something the Raiders are going to have to address in the offseason to protect their young quarterback, if it is indeed Mendoza. So, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and again, like even with some of these quarterbacks in the playoffs, if you're a Drake May or if you're a Bo Nix, a lot of these guys don't have by any means like elite rushing upside. They don't go out there looking to run, but they have the ability, like you said, to extend plays. They have the ability to get out of the pocket, run when they need to, and get out of bad situations, which is tough if you don't have that ability. That's my concern with Mendoza. At the same time, though, he's 6'5". You can improve on that side. That's just something you're given. That's great for him as well. And I hear his work ethic is phenomenal. And if you're a hard worker, that's 60, 70%, because everybody drafted in the first 2 rounds has the talent to succeed in the NFL. So again, those are our thoughts on Mendoza. Now getting into Dante Moore as well. Dante Moore, the biggest thing with him going into this game especially was him and being linked to the Jets. A lot of people believe he should have stayed another year or he should request it being out of the Jets, because Jets, again, we know they're probably one of the worst, if not the worst organization across all sports. They're horrendous. But at the same time, I always said, if you are a top prospect and you are that guy, you got to be the one to change the situation. There's a reason why you were drafted that high. You got to be the one that wants to change. And again, if we ever see the Jets be a perennial playoff team in our lifetime, the guy that changes that is going to get so much more credit than any other guy right now that has changed the situation just because of everything they have gone through. So that's my thoughts on that. I do believe, again, if you're this top tier talent, you should want to change an organization. Because, again, I remember rumors a couple of years back with Caleb Williams, his dad not wanting him to go to the Bears or whatever. And the Bears, again, the last 20 years have been in a similar spot as the Jets. Look how much he turned that situation around very shortly and the amount of grace he's getting. So, again, like I said, I'm not in love with Dante Moore as a talent at all. But if you do believe him as that talent, he is that elite talent, you should be the one to want to take that opportunity to change. Now, when we look at the Oregon-Indiana game, like you said, it went as bad as it could possibly go. He, again, lost by 30-plus points, fumbled the ball 2 times, even though the one that hit off the running back's helmet I really don't think was his fault. But he fumbled the ball. He threw a pick 6 to open the game. And everything we talked about on this podcast going against Indiana, they are a team you can't make mistakes against. Now, don't get me wrong. With how much Indiana dominated that game within the trenches, I do not think Oregon was coming out of that game with a win no matter what. But if you were able to protect the ball, extend drives, make yourself look a lot better, and even if you go out, again, fighting in a close game, you make yourself definitely look a lot better in NFL eyes as well. Now, I have said this time and time again, and whether it's in the NFL, whether it's with college, especially in college, I don't think one game should define a whole career. I think when you are looking at an NFL prospect, you got to look at the whole body of work and you got to look at the potential going into the NFL. If you were a big Dante Moore supporter before this, I don't think you should, again, be off of him based on one game where I think, again, he was going up against probably the much better team, a team of destiny, it looked like. But getting into everything now, we are talking about if Dante Moore should return to Oregon or if he should go into the NFL. My opinion personally, I do think it is a no-brainer. I do think his stock is a first rounder right now, just based on supply and demand. I think, again, we look at the NFL landscape, there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. And like we said, it is a weak quarterback class where they're going to need to pick more than one quarterback in the first round. So I do think he still has that first round grade based on potential, based on physical ability. I think if you stay another year in college, nothing is guaranteed. We saw it this year with Drew Aller. Drew Aller, if he would have came out, there was rumors the Browns would have took him within the top 5. Now Drew Aller is going to be an afterthought in this week NFL draft class because, again, you go back another year, you don't know what the situation is going to be. We know Oregon's always a top 8 team, but you don't know what the situation is going to be as far as you could get injured or depending on other guys around you get injured as well. And I also think next year you have prospects that people have been waiting on for 3-4 years in an Arch Manning, in a Julian Saint. So I think at very best, he moves down to the third quarterback in that class. I think you're presuming a lot of risk not going right now. I think he's 100% ready to be a franchise NFL quarterback. No, I'm really not high on him at all. But I think right now, if you look at the long-term money value and that this opportunity could change like that from year to year, I think it is best off that he goes in right now. I don't think his stock will ever be higher.
Yeah, no, like what you said, nothing's guaranteed, and that's immediately who I thought of as Drew Aller. Getting hurt earlier this year, and going back to school, and Penn State just completely fell apart. They let go of James Franklin. Yeah, it's just not only was it like the worst case scenario for Dante Moore, it was just like the worst case scenario for the Jets because I was watching Brandon Tierney's podcast, and he brought up like different scenarios. Like you could have had Mendoza not play as good, Dante Moore ball out, and then all of a sudden, like the Raiders have a little bit more of a conversation, like on who they should take, or the different type of scenarios he was bringing up. But it was like the worst case scenario for the Jets because now you see Mendoza balls out, Dante Moore had a horrible game, and now you're kind of just like, what are we gonna do? I mean, could they like trade out then? I mean, it's just, and on top of that too. From a Jets perspective, if you're a Jet fan, like, do you trust the current regime to be able to develop a young quarterback because of the season that they had? I'm not really sure. I mean, I think the GM made some good moves with the trades, but, now we got to see what he does, putting together this draft now. Like, what kind of draft are the Jets going to have? So there's definitely a lot more questions now. And maybe it's not Dante Moore. Maybe it's one of these other quarterbacks instead. But yeah, that game was also just like the worst case scenario for the Jets because now Mendoza is for certain going to be the number 1 pick, and now you're kind of just left with, well, who are we going to go with? And this is the same exact scenario back in 2020, right? They win those games down the stretch, and instead of being locked in with the number 1 overall pick, you would have took Trevor Lawrence. Then you elect to take Zach Wilson, and we know how that went. So Jets are in a tough spot right now, and even with having the number 2 overall pick, because again, it's a weak quarterback class. So, yeah.
And then like we go through this every single year, the Jets could right now at the number 2 pick take an elite player at a different position, whether it's an edge rusher, linebacker, guys like Avril Reese, Ruben Bain, take a safety who's a generational safety in Caleb Downs. They could go with the elite player option and then wait another year. They're probably going to have a top pick again, knowing the Jets, and go after a more touted quarterback. But just like I said, this year, a lot of times, even though, again, we've been waiting on Arch Manning for 3 years, and a guy in Julian Saint, a lot of people have been waiting on as well. you're not guaranteed that those guys are going to be looked at the same light next year. Just how, again, in this year's class, we thought the first round was going to be completely different than it was. So again, like from year to year, you don't necessarily know. And then another thing I wanted to talk about as well, especially with the Jets and other teams that need a quarterback, you have a guy right now in Malik Willis who hasn't shown much. Again, he's looked great in spurts in a couple of games or whatever. He was obviously a disaster coming out of Liberty. We talked about him, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago. He now looks good in NFL eyes. He's not a guy that you really see much of. And this is a guy this offseason that's going to command $25-30 million as well. This is just what the NFL is right now with supply and demand at the quarterback position. If you are a quarterback right now and you, even if you're not that most highly touted guy, a guy that I don't love, like any of these quarterbacks in this class, if you have the ability to go out and you have that first, second round grade, just go, because you don't know if that's going to happen again. And the supply right now compared to the demand, again, like if you're a quarterback, it's all in your hands. So again, I agree the Jets are in a pretty bad situation regardless. I personally wouldn't take a quarterback with the number 2 pick. Again, whether they want to possibly trade down, even though I don't know if anybody's going to trade up for Dante Moore at this point, I would take the elite option. But again, you have a Jets fan base that's going to have to wait another year for their quarterback. Like, I don't know. They're in a little bit of a tough bind just based on the rush for them. Now we're going to talk about Trinidad Chambliss. Trinidad Chambliss obviously was super excited in this college football playoff run. He was arguably the most excited player, obviously, with his skill set. I talked about his skill set kind of separates himself from the other players in this draft class. When you look at Trinidad Chambliss, his ability to extend plays out of the pocket, looking to pass, he's able to get out of a lot of bad situations. Again, I don't think necessarily he is a better prospect at his size and what he has put on tape in his college career. Because, again, a lot of people did want to see more from him. You're talking about a guy that played Division II football his entire career. Great story. But, again, we've only seen, 10, 11, 12 games with him at the Division I level. So that's obviously a big risk. And, again, he is the smallest quarterback out of the 4 we are talking about as well. But, again, he is a quarterback that can move out of the pocket. I personally think he's a guy that will go in the second round. That's kind of where I grade him. Just, again, not necessarily even his grade, just based on what's out there as well. But, again, could be an option for the Jets or other teams with these first-round picks, multiple first-round picks, to take a guy who you believe is elite at a different position, not reach for a quarterback, and then maybe either, again, whether it's like a la Jackson Dart last year, dive back into the late first or go in the second for one of these quarterbacks like a Trinidad Chambliss or a Ty Simpson we are going to talk about. Trinidad Chambliss, I talked about in here, he got denied 6-year eligibility, so he's kind of like forced in a sense to go into the NFL. He could do what Diego Pavia did and just like, again, it takes a while for like legal cases and judges to go over this. So while it's getting mulled out, he could technically play. But again, depending on what happens with that, your season could stop in the middle of the season or it could stop right before and you're assuming a lot of risk. I do think he should go out again, like I said, with the weak quarterback draft class, with the demand. I do think there is a chance somebody looks at him as a guy that could potentially be a future franchise quarterback. So I think he should go out. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like based on how this draft class is, I mean, I feel like you could see, and you kind of brought it up, you see something similar to what happened last year where you do see a quarterback get taken early in the first round and then, see a scenario where a team trades in, towards the end of the first round, trades back in and drafts somebody. Because, I mean, for most of the guys that, we've talked about, doesn't seem like, they're going to be taken or, it depends, what teams decide to do. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be a heavy quarterback draft, especially like in the first round. And I think that'd probably be the smarter approach for some of these other teams is you wait. But again, you could see a team, trade up and then all of a sudden your plan take somebody, goes awry because with Jackson Dart, I think the Rams were supposedly interested in him and then the Giants, traded back in and then they took him. And Dart could have been the heir to Matthew Stafford when Stafford called it a career. So, I could definitely see a scenario with that, with how that draft plays out, where you see Mendoza get taken, and then all of a sudden, all these other teams are kind of passing on the other quarterbacks, and then you see these guys go in the second, third round, or maybe potentially they get traded back. Someone trades back in towards the back end of the first round and takes somebody. That's kind of how I see that unfolding. But it's gonna be interesting for sure, and especially we got the combine and all that stuff coming up. So obviously I don't really take much stock into that. As the years have gone on, watching the game, like you don't really take that much stock in the combine and all that, but some teams, they might fall in love with your pro day or what you do at the combine, and then all of a sudden your stock rises. So right now there's not going to be a ton of quarterbacks that get taken in the first round. I think that's kind of what we're gearing up towards, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, it is tough because as the draft approaches, again, teams get more needy sometimes. Quarterbacks go up more than we thought. But we also seen cases I was going to mention too where quarterbacks go down. Like we saw, again, it was an extreme scenario with Shedeur, but for the longest time we thought Shedeur was going to be a first rounder. That's what the media was saying. Then he falls all the way down. I mean, we've seen it with Malik Willis as well. I remember there was one point when we were doing our old podcast where we talked about Malik Willis going in the first, second round. He went far past that. So again, it could happen either way. Nobody knows a lot of the time. Some crazy stuff happens. But again, like I said, for all these quarterbacks, I'm kind of going on the same theme. Weak quarterback class, a lot of demand for quarterbacks. You don't know what's going to happen next year if you stay in school. Going over to the last guy, Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson is a guy that I really like. I mean, I was talking about Jackson Dart last year compared to Cam Ward. I like Jackson Dart more than Cam Ward. I like Jackson Dart a lot. Obviously, I told this to you. I like his play style more, and again, his ability to play in the SEC. And he was a guy that was, again, projected to go in the second round. Giants trade up in the first. I kind of see the same type of scenario with me and with Ty Simpson as well. I like Ty Simpson's play style a lot. I think he's accurate and he throws with anticipation. And I also think he moves well in the pocket and extend plays when he's getting a consistent pocket. I think again for him and for a lot of these quarterbacks, it isn't that bad not being the first quarterback or second quarterback taken because a lot of times you are going to a better situation. Right now with Ty Simpson, he's garnering $6.5 million deals to go back in school. Again, I kind of going off the similar theme. I would stay going to the NFL, but at the same time, I could kind of see Ty Simpson being in the same spot next year where he gets that $6.5 million deal. He develops, and then he develops even further. And then he's probably not going to pass Arch Manning or Julian Sain, but he will be, again, that third quarterback taken. Again, we've seen 3 quarterbacks get taken in the first round. I think for him, he kind of can't miss because, again, I do like his play style. I do think he could show more with another year on tape. I do think the offers you're getting is ridiculous. Again, outside of an injury, I don't think his stock will move that much from year to year. I wouldn't mind either scenario. I would rather him lean again just because of the risk going in the first round. But again, a lot of people are low on him. Obviously, he's smaller than Moore and Mendoza, even though Moore isn't the biggest guy either. But again, I don't think a situation was apples to those guys as well. Obviously, everybody looks at Alabama as being that historical great program, but I don't think they were that this year. I think the offensive line was inconsistent. I really believe they had no run game for 80% of their games as well. So I do think he was dealt a tough hand, even though, again, casuals and more, again, people don't follow college football as close. They're going to say, well, he played for Alabama and he did nothing. That's going to be the common consensus. But again, we talk about how the landscape's changing, how a lot of these teams aren't what they were, and I believe that's Alabama too. What do you think about Ty Simpson again as the last quarterback we were talking about, what he should do, and again, the deals he's garnering?
Yeah, I mean, I like Dante Moore. I mean, the Alabama's last game did not go great. I mean, they got blown out.
He left early.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I guess maybe you do consider going back if you're him. And yeah, Alabama's not the same program it once was. Obviously with Nick Saban no longer being there. But I guess for him, he probably goes back. You talked about his play style. If he qualifies if he declares for the draft, then maybe he is another guy that goes later in the draft. But just we're kind of in agreement on that. So, but yeah, I mean, Not the best game, to leave off on if you declare for the draft.
Yeah, 100%. That wraps up all of that. I mean, again, Ty Simpson's the guy that we could see staying, but our common theme again, just based on the history, how everything has been going, how just like unpredictable college sports, let alone college football, has been. If you got the stock right now, you should probably go because you're not guaranteed it in